being responsible, let's get right to it. That's what we're talking about today, being responsible. And being responsible isn't a bad thing. And it isn't about irresponsibility. That's not where we're going, and that's not what we're talking about today at all. It's about how heavy responsibility has actually become for a lot of us, actually, for most of us. Because even after a decision, you still carry that weight still stays. And I want to talk about why. Because right decisions or wrong decisions, a lot of time we still like that weight of responsibility is still on us. And so the thing is, you're tracking how everyone else is affected by this responsibility, by this decision. And so you're holding the responsibility of it. You want everyone to be okay, right? You want this work, you want this to work for everyone. And when someone doesn't win, it just feels heavy. It's you believe in a win-win situation. You're always looking for that win-win. How can we make it where we win on all sides? It's not a win or a lose, but how can we all benefit from this? And you try to soften it when someone doesn't win. It's kind of like that thing that they're doing now in school where everyone is a winner. Well, unfortunately, that's not true. There are losers. There are those who don't lose, but even in the losing, there is still a win, and it's just finding the ability to point that out. So what happens is you're working so hard for this win, for this thing to work, right? That you keep shooting towards it, you keep working to it, even at the cost of yourself. And the reason we do this is because we're capable, right? I mean, if that's you, you know you're capable. Go ahead and raise your hand because you know you can do this. You know that you can make things happen or make things work when you try hard enough, when you work hard enough, when you think right. Just give you a second to think, and you're going to figure this out. And so you take these things on. You take them on because you know, hey, I'll figure it out. I'll find a way. And what happens is you're so focused on what it is you're trying to accomplish, on how you're trying to serve others, on how you're trying to make things happen for the good of others, most times, you lose sight of yourself in this whole bargaining. And so it stops feeling like a service. It stops feeling like you're serving others, and it starts feeling heavy. And in this heaviness, what happens is your frustration builds and your resentment builds because nobody is working or trying as hard as you are. And that scares you because that's not what you signed up for. That's not how and why you got in to this in the first place. So my question is, how many of you feel that heaviness? Go ahead and raise your hand if you feel that heaviness of responsibility in your life, that you're feeling like you're no longer doing things because it's your purpose or your service, or it's because of that responsibility that you have to see it through. And at some point during this, if you're not there already, you're probably thinking, I don't want to live like this anymore. This isn't what I signed up for. And so you get angry. A lot of times we get angry at ourselves. And then we resent the people who we feel are holding us hostage to this responsibility. And something feels off. We don't want to stop caring. That's not who we are. And that's not how we live our lives. And we can't. You just can't shut that off. But we don't want to disappear either. That's that's not what we want. And when I was in real estate, there was a coach I had called Brian Buffini, and you're gonna hear me talk about him a lot because I learned some good stuff from him. And he talked about both and instead of either or. And so we can have both. We can take care of ourselves and we can still care and love others. And loving can be done without carrying everything, without holding the responsibility of everything else. And I want you to understand that, you know what? If you're struggling in this right now, if you're identifying or finding yourself in what I'm talking about, there's nothing wrong with you at all. Somewhere along the way, what happened was responsibility stopped meaning my part and started meaning the outcome. You started thinking of your responsibility went as far as how this thing was going to turn out. You start taking on the responsibility of other people's actions, on how they were going to have what outcome they were going to have. And so even when you did everything right, you started taking it personally because you saw it as a reflection of you. You said you would be responsible for it. But you know something? Even as a mother, there is a place where our responsibility ends. From zero, let's say, to 18, we'll pick 18. You have a responsibility to your child to teach them, to help them grow as functioning adults, to nourish them, to care for them. But there comes a part and a point when they start learning how to also be independent and take care of themselves. And that's what I'm talking about here. We don't take that responsibility on for everyone else. There's a point when we sever ourselves from it. We let it go and we let them take responsibility for their actions and what it is they're supposed to do in this. And it's like what happens is it's like we don't just see the result. And especially if they aren't right, what happens is you turn that back on yourself. You start saying, somewhere along the way, somehow I failed. Maybe I didn't teach them well enough. Maybe I wasn't clear. Whatever it is, somehow you failed in here because their outcome wasn't the outcome that you expected it to be. And sometimes that outcome, in fact, most of the times, if someone else is concerned, that outcome is because maybe they didn't do their part as well. And that's how responsibility starts turning into control for you. Not because you want control, but because having that control makes you feel like you have that stability somewhere in there, that the ground won't suddenly open up under you and you have that stability. And you say, well, having this control worked for me before. Yeah, it did. It's helped you succeed. It helped you accomplish things in your life. It helped you keep things from falling apart. It helped you raise your kids. So your nervous system has learned over time, over all these years, that you've held on so tight to this control so that you could have this stability in your life that, hey, look, girl, this is how we survive. And at some point, being right in the situation started feeling less important than having that stability. And you start feeling like, I can give up being right. It doesn't matter if I'm right, but I can't give up having that stability, that foundation, that knowing what's going to happen next, not having that unsurety in my life. I can't function that way. I'm okay not being right, but the idea of not knowing what's coming around the corner, the idea of not knowing the outcome, I can't live like that. And so what do? You organize, you research, you build a plan, and you even build a backup plan and maybe a backup plan to that, right? Because preparedness, it actually feels like safety. But the moment one piece of your safety, your stability isn't clear, everything starts to feel, well, shaky. It's kind of like that domino effect. Once one thing falls, everything behind it starts falling apart. And that's not what you want. That's what you're afraid of happening. And so what happens? You stay on high alert. You're always scanning. You're always monitoring. And it used to work. But it's exhausting now. Because you're holding on to that responsibility and that fallacy that you're responsible for keeping everything together. You're responsible for not letting that first domino fall. And that's when your nervous system says, I can't keep this up. I'm not meant to function this way. And it's not because you're failing at anything. It's because you've hit your limit. It can't function. And that fear that keeps nagging at you, that fear of, if I loosen my grip, if I let anything fall, that's my integrity. And I stand behind what I say, and my word is my word. And if my integrity fails, if what I've built up of being the responsible one, of always being there for others, then at that point, am I who I say I am? Because you've built your whole identity around you being responsible, around your integrity of not letting that house of cards fall, that you question, will you still be you if something falls? But I want you to understand this. Integrity does not require self-erasure. Responsibility doesn't require control. And outcomes are not a reflection of your character. And you're staying in control. What happens is, it's like this, what do you call it? Etch-a-sketch. I remember those. And you used to build this amazing thing, this house of cards, this house of responsibility. And you find out as it gets heavier, as you try to hold on to it, as you try to maintain it, slowly, in order to hold it together, You have to start erasing you. And that's not what we're here to do. And that's what we're not about to do. Not on my watch. When we see that, when we understand that, I want you to keep that picture of that etch a sketch in your mind. When we see that, as we slowly see that picture of our erasing ourselves, we don't hold on to that responsibility as tightly, huh? Is it worth it? It doesn't trap you the way you used to. And we can finally say, a lot of times with help, that this isn't a reflection of me. And you know what? I'll be okay. This is why responsibility feels so exhausting. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because of what you've been taught or what you've even trained yourself that responsibility looks like. I want you to understand, and I want you to get what I'm getting ready to say. Being responsible isn't the problem. And caring deeply for others and for yourself isn't the problem either. The problem is when responsibility quietly turns into carrying everything alone. The problem is that things stop being service for us and starts being just another thing that we have to do. And it starts becoming that burden. You were never meant to be responsible for outcomes. I want you to get that. You were never meant to be responsible for outcomes. And I learned this lesson hard. There was a time in my life when I would work so hard for others because I knew the outcome they wanted, that I was going to make this outcome happen, whether they wanted it or, now I won't say they told me they wanted it, but whether they still wanted it or whether they were doing the work to make it happen or not, I was going to make it happen because I said I was going to help them. And you were meant only to be responsible for your part. Someone once said to me that you never work harder for someone else than they're willing to work for something themselves. There's a difference. Integrity does not require self-erasure. Keeping your word does not mean overriding yourself. And being dependable does not mean being the one who absorbs everything. You can care deeply and still have limits. We call them boundaries, right? You can be loving without carrying the emotional weight of everyone else involved. And you can be responsible without living on high alert. If responsibility feels exhausting right now for you, raise your hand, let me know. And it's not because you're doing it wrong, it's because you've been carrying more than was ever yours to hold on to. It's not yours. And it's time that you let go. And if you're ready to let it go, let me know. If this conversation hit home, I would love to know. And if you're realizing how much that you've been carrying alone, holding on to other people's responsibility because you wanted to make sure they got the outcome that they wanted, but they're not doing the things that they need to do to get it. The answer isn't to keep pushing harder to make it happen or to figure it out for them. What most women like us need is space, space to think, space to actually have the time to feel, and space where we don't have to hold everything together for everybody else. Holding things together for ourselves alone is enough, more than enough. And that's why what I did is I created the Undivided. And what that is it's a quiet, grounded space for women who are tired of carrying all this emotional weight alone. And it's not a place to be fixed. I'm not there to fix you. I'm not a carpenter. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. And it's not a place to perform. It's just a place to feel that stability again, to feel steady. And it's not open right now, but there is a wait list. If this resonated with you, if this conversation resonated with you, if you're ready to change things for yourself, if you're ready to stop erasing that board, this is your next step. No pressure, just an invitation. You don't have to keep carrying this yourself. I want you to know that. And until next time, most Thursdays, I am here to discuss these things that we're holding. So until next time, I'm Mischelle O'Neill, and you are on Break Time Live. I hope this break was worth it. Take care. Bye-bye.